Hi, Dan Stein. We need a mid-May recap of the Biden border crisis and try to review for all of you exactly what the Biden administration has done in the last 100 plus days to put this country on the edge of a truly catastrophic migration control crisis, border control crisis like we've never seen before in history. Never before in the history of the United States has a president come into office with the objective of overtly sabotaging, that's right, I said it, sabotaging U.S. immigration controls. It is the conscious and deliberate policy of the Biden administration to reward, encourage, and promote massive illegal immigration and to encourage that illegal immigration through the promises of endless amnesty programs, path to citizenship, and movement into the voting booth. This is the express policy now of the Democratic Party. Make no mistake about it, this is the agenda. Now, first, let's review what Alejandro Mayorkas, the head of DHS, has done to improve border control, border security, deter illegal immigration, stop fraud, and empower the American people to once again decide who comes into this country and who doesn't. All right, here's the list. Well, that didn't take long. Now, let's take a look at the things that he's done to dismantle the system since he's taken over, all right? Well, number one, he's eliminated the migration protection protocols that required asylum seekers to remain in Mexico so that they didn't forum shop, didn't come up to make these phony asylum claims and get into the United States with work documents. Now, he's been admitting unaccompanied alien minors and delivering them to the Department of HHS so they can be put with sponsors in the U.S. They're being flown into the country with no prospect that they're ever going to have immigration proceedings and obviously ever be removed. Now, simultaneously, he has kept Title 42 in place, but he's negotiating with the ACLU to create exceptions to Title 42. Title 42 is a section that allowed the president to suspend entry because of the pandemic. Now, the ACLU wants that to be eliminated, therefore making the borders virtually uncontrolled. Any one of millions of people can come, make phony asylum claims, get work documents, disappear into the country. Truly immigration anarchy. That's the objective of the ACLU. Obviously, these settlements will be taken with the ACLU by the Biden administration in concert to achieve very damaging settlements and therefore precedents that will be resonating for years to come. Well, what else has Mayorkas done? Well, he's hamstrung ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, so there's no removals, no deportations. Criminal aliens after serving state sentences are going free. There are no ICE detainers any longer. Effectively, the deportation and removal machinery has come to a screeching halt, as the Biden administration promised it would. So they're not deporting anybody. Message goes around the world, you get in, you get to stay, no reason of any reason to think you're ever going to be removed, because they've emasculated immigration enforcement in the interior. Obviously, they've rolled up these cooperative agreements with local law enforcement. They're not issuing detainers, asking sheriffs to hold aliens. They're essentially confining ICE to very, very narrow grounds of very serious violent criminal alien removals or terrorists, and that's about it. Maybe they're doing that. So now we're at this phase where there's no interior enforcement. There's no enforcement of employer sanctions, no sanctions on employers. Now, these same employers, by the way, are demanding amnesty, working with the W crowd, the George W. Bush crowd, to push these amnesty bills and also pushing for health care for illegal aliens. So not only have all these businesses violated the law by hiring illegal aliens, now they want us all taxpayers to pay for the health care for the folks that they've hired in violation of the law. So there are no criminal penalties apparently being enforced for businesses that do this, and now they want taxpayers to pick up the tab for their subsidized labor. Of course, the left wants these big mass amnesty programs. Biden introduced a bill, pushed a bill to be introduced in Congress, which sets an eligibility date for mass amnesty at 1/1/21, which of course is crazy because that incentivizes more illegal crossings and it tells everybody you should not bother respecting U.S. law because you'll never be deported. They've initiated catch and release. They're admitting families. They claim that they're denying entry to single people, but in fact, many are getting in. They are providing what they call own recognizance release, but not issuing notices to appear, which means there's not even a court date. And these aliens will disappear in the society, and there'll be no way to find them. Recently, Mayorkas has rolled up the fines that the Trump administration had paid. Fines were important for aliens who refused to leave the country after being ordered deported. Okay, if you were ordered deported and you refused to leave the country, the Trump administration was imposing, as they had under the law, the right to do, fines per day for aliens who refused to leave the country. Mayorkas said there's no evidence these things work, so we're going to roll that up because he's obviously not interested in deporting anybody. So he got rid of those. He's not going to apprehend aliens near courthouses. So they don't have to worry about after a criminal sentencing, with, say, work release or something, they have to be picked up by immigration authorities. So he doesn't want them to be released there. As I mentioned, these asylum claims are now being entertained for a very broad basis that are far beyond what's required under the law. For things like generalized persecution, generalized violence, all kinds of weird social issues, social, gender, whatever you want to call it. Broadening the basis of asylum to include all kinds of things. Now, Title 42 is the only thing that stands between this country and total border chaos. That's the provision that allows the president to suspend entry because of the pandemic. Now, if Title 42 is eliminated, as the ACLU is pressuring the administration to do, it means that there will be simply an unlimited number of people making phony asylum claims at the border by the millions. And now the ACLU is cherry-picking people that they think basically our taxpayers will want to support to bring them in as special humanitarian cases in concert with or in conjunction with the Biden administration to try to avoid having to litigate the issue with the ACLU in court. Now, try to keep in mind that Mayorkas came into office with a particular problem, in our view, that he believes that no matter what Congress has said, he as the Secretary of Homeland Security has the right to just parole in unlimited numbers and classes of people. That's where DACA came from. This idea that he just has the authority to go ahead and ignore the law. Now, try to keep in mind, during the Trump administration, every single time a regulation came in or even a proposal came in that might have had a scintilla of prejudicial impact against intending aliens, the ACLU and others were in court after court after court demanding nationwide injunctions to stop it. Meantime, the Biden folks are letting people in who have no colorable claim to admission, and there seems to be no ability to stop it. Courts are reluctant to intervene, and therefore Mayorkas knows that he has this what appears to be unlimited authority to parole in aliens, give them work documents. In fact, he's giving work documents to people who've been ordered deported but who have not left the country. This rewards and incentivizes illegal immigration, makes a entire mockery of our immigration control apparatus. It's made the United States a laughingstock of the world. Why would any alien comply with immigration law? They're trying to move these unaccompanied minors into the country as fast as possible, waiving fingerprint requirements for sponsors, trying to put people with families who may not actually be related to those family members, doing everything they can to get them out of Border Patrol facilities and into the hands of Health and Human Services. Now, apparently Becerra, who's HHS Secretary, has said we need to slow this thing down, but the activists don't care. They want to ram them in as fast as possible. You know that some of these minors are going to wind up as victims of sex trafficking and other kinds of trafficking as a result of these kinds of practices. Apparently the Biden administration simply doesn't care. Now they've delayed, of course, they've obviously stopped building the wall and left the wall half built, which of course makes it easy for smugglers to get around. By imposing this ridiculous policy with unaccompanied minors and alien families showing up and turning themselves in, the Border Patrol gets distracted, so naturally drug trafficking has skyrocketed as distracted border agents are too busy to go out there and apprehend the drug smugglers. So fentanyl is skyrocketing and Americans are dying for no good reason. What else has he done? Well, he's flying aliens into the U.S. at taxpayer expense, often identified by nonprofits in the sending countries. He wants to pre-screen these so-called refugees. They're not really refugees. They're just people with relatives in the U.S. who want to have their family members join them from places in Central America, Northern Triangle countries, fly them in to destinations unknown to taxpayers and the American people in the dead of night. They are administratively closing, or want to administratively close, deportation cases at the whim of immigration judges. They're trying to speed these unaccompanied minors through the system in such a way that they're out of the view of the press, but nevertheless the numbers are, in our view, going to continue to climb as people continue to come into the country in record numbers. So what else has he ultimately left the American people? I mean, we have overt sabotage, and now Mayorkas is planning to bring his nominees to the fore for Customs and Border Protection and for U.S. Immigration, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS. Jardu, former Obama appointee who went to work for America's Voice, wants to defund the Border Patrol. Obviously, someone totally hostile to immigration enforcement. They say that USCIS is an immigration service agency, but they're supposed to do so in compliance with the law. USCIS obviously has been taken over by the immigration bar and would rather rubber stamp applications through without regard to actual eligibility. Putting Jadu in charge of USCIS is an insult. Frankly, this stuff is very much like the way the left reacted to the appointment of Secretary of the Interior. If you have your memory caps on and can remember this name, James Watt. This was a guy who was considered an anti-environmentalist, put in charge of the Interior Department. Same kind of appointees, Jadu for USCIS, and this guy Chris Magnus, who's the Tucson former police chief, who clearly is hostile to U.S. immigration enforcement, to cooperation with state and local police. As any kind of force multiplier, he believes that the trust of local police means you have to tolerate massive criminal illegal aliens in your country, in your community. And these are the kind of appointees that are being presented to Congress. It's so important, first of all, Republicans in Congress need to stop voting to confirm these outrageous and unqualified nominees, people who are attitudinally inappropriate and not at all committed to the agency's mission which they're charged to govern. So these are not confirmation, confirmable appointees in our view, and no Republican should vote to confirm them. Secondly, Mayorkas has to go. I think it's been established at this juncture that Mayorkas is incompetent and inept at doing everything but accelerating the mass of illegal aliens trying to get into the country. His objective is not to secure the homeland, not to protect the homeland, but to make it as possible for our borders to be porous and out of control. He's lost credibility when he turns around and says the borders are closed when they're obviously not closed, and they're obviously being made a mockery of day in and day out by families turning themselves in and expecting to be treated to immediate release or even being flown into the country to be joining relatives who are here illegally as well. Naturally, the Immigration Service is not doing anything with respect to sponsors who show up to claim their relatives, which again is facilitating illegal immigration. So we have to clear away all the smoke and recognize what Mayorkas is at this point. He is a co-conspirator working with smuggler cartels in Mexico to bring illegal aliens into the country. He is a co-conspirator, he is violating outside the law, he's breaching public trust, and he has no reason, there's no reason in the world why this man should be allowed to continue to run the Department of Homeland Security. We're obviously witnessing important cyber attacks against key parts of the American infrastructure. All this guy does is prattle on about, some great alleged threat of white supremacy or some such nonsense, and not doing his job to actually protect the homeland against foreign terror attacks or massive illegal immigration. Mayorkas needs to go. This administration needs a gut check and a reality check that this is a politically disastrous situation. Taxpayers, the American people, will not tolerate the view of their borders out of control for much longer. There are going to have to be some serious changes at the helm of DHS and in this administration. Kamala Harris was given the responsibility for solving the border crisis. They talk about these abstract ideas about root causes. In the long run, maybe they'll get that done in another 50 years, but that's not going to happen anytime in this administration. These are not serious policy proposals, and they're not serious political professionals who are talking about them. Time has come to stop pretending this administration has any ability to know what it's doing, that it's apparently captive to the kind of special interests that would rather decide, rather than American people, who gets to come into this country and how many. Now we hear a lot about the census that came out that said Americans aren't having enough children to replace themselves, and therefore, of course, the usual suspects immediately come back out and say, oh, we must need mass immigration to make up for that. Well, first of all, there's nothing wrong with stabilizing your population size. There's nothing wrong with getting off the gravy train of inexorable population growth. For an administration that already claims we need to be changing our consumption patterns and decreasing our carbon footprint, why do we want to keep bringing in all these people who want to increase their carbon footprint by living in the United States? It makes absolutely no sense. Secondly, the question is, well, why are Americans not having more children? Well, maybe that ought to be the national conversation instead of bringing in all these people from other countries who may never, frankly, given the cost of housing and the average wage in this country, are likely to ever achieve the American dream. Let's take a look at the reasons why Americans are having fewer children. Could it be that the cost of housing and the standard of living is so hard and so high that it requires two-income families, that Americans become so completely committed to trying to sustain a decent standard of living, that there's no time to raise children, no time to sacrifice the income in order to have the housing that people want, in order to raise 2 or 3 children, or the fact that public quality of public education has declined to the point where we're not raising kids who are functionally employable in the future. These are many things that ought to be explored in our debate about why Americans aren't having more than 1.6 children. Women obviously have other things they plan to do with their time besides raising children. Personally, I think raising children is a wonderful thing, and probably is something people would like to do more of. But rather than just say, well, we're just going to try to open the spigot and get other people who've been raised in some other society's educational system to make up for our own. I mean, this is where the Biden administration claimed they wanted to create good union jobs for Americans. Well, where are those good union jobs? In fact, what he's done is he's continued to restart the gravy train of the H-1B program and the other non-immigrant visa programs to take American jobs at a time when Americans are being paid to stay home, apparently. None of this makes any sense. The Trump administration was well on its way to securing the non-immigrant visa programs to ensure that there were incentives to train and hire American workers and improve American public education. Once again, we see narrow-minded, short-term special interests pushing in the other direction. The Biden administration seems to have no gainful labor force and infrastructure improvement plan that makes any kind of economic sense for the future. And certainly given the fact that immigration is out of control and people are racing across the borders now by the millions every year, it seems unlikely that we are going to achieve any substantial increase long-term in wages, even if we see a short-term spike, as employers try to lure Americans back from these stimulus checks and unemployment compensation that they're in right now. For all of us working at FAIR, what does this mean? What it means is that we're in a very dangerous period. Over the next 12 months or so, we're going to see continued efforts to try to ram these bills through Congress. Bad bills, bad ideas, not good policy. We have to try to restrain the Biden administration from doing irreconcilable, irrevocable damage to our immigration control system. And we have to try to get back into the next election era window where there will be important debates going on now about how to better control immigration on a more bipartisan basis. Good news is FAIR has also launched some digital ads that are going to be taken off starting the other day, actually, that are actually playing very well in these swing district areas where Democrats are, that blame Biden for initiating the border crisis and then blame these members of Congress for voting for legislation that passes amnesty bills that actually incentivize what's going on along the border. These ads are powerful. They're part of why you support FAIR. We have to bring the message where it actually is going to be heard. That's where it's going to be heard. Biden is bleeding underwater politically on the immigration crisis. Nothing is more damaging to the political prospects of an executive, commander-in-chief, whatever, than the abject sight of losing control of your borders. We've seen this repeatedly, politically, not just in the United States, but around the world. Biden is playing with fire if he believes he can continue to pursue these policies without doing anything to bring back some of the Trump policies that were so effective. You and I working together, you and I, me at FAIR, all of us, movement, allied organizations, this is the time we have to keep the heat on. This is a critical 10-month window where we can't give up keeping on the pressure. Pressure on the White House, pressure our Republican allies who are willing to stand up and object to what the Democrats are doing. Fight against moving any of these bills in the Senate at this juncture, because every day's delay works in our favor. This cannot stand. We cannot let this pattern, we cannot let them try to achieve what they want to achieve. Our future national self-determination is at stake. Our ability to be successful as a nation is riding in the balance. I know you'll join me in sticking with FAIR and remaining active and engaged. I'm Dan Stein, and thanks for listening.